Every single time I move.
I'm going to put you in my video.
Why?
Because I am. But the squeaking is coming from this guy over here who's working on one of his rods. So I apologize in advance for it, but we're going to keep this project here rolling. So we're going to do what's considered a jig resto-mod. This was a jig I'm presuming probably dates back, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe mid-80s, that my mentor had made. And this was the stuff that we had made then. I came across these. They're still around. Hooks are actually still in very good shape. They're not rusty at all. I mean, they look like they just came out of a box, to be honest with you. But I thought it'd be a pretty neat little feature to take this and tear it down, rebuild it as to what it would look like today from me making it. We're going to do the exact same thing. It was a black jig at one point in time, black head, black hair with a little yellow bottom to it in red thread. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create the same thing, red eyes, black hair jig, yellow bottom. And what I'm not going to do is, typically when I do two-tones like this, I'll actually go up and I'll paint the bottom of the head to match, so it's all one color pattern. But just for the sake of what I'm doing here, I'm going to keep that head a solid black color. Now, interestingly enough too, the eyelet in this is that's not acceptable anymore. Back then, you know, it was no big deal to dig those eyelets out, but that eyelet hopefully will be open by the time we're done this. So to get started on them, first thing we'll do is we're gonna get down to the frame of this thing. We're gonna start by shredding off this thread. Get the thread off, and we're just going to tear it down, and it doesn't take long to take apart a hair jig. Probably should have just cut the whole blasted thing and be done with it, but I wanted to see just how he made them tight. We definitely made them tight. Yeah, I'm presuming this is a ball head jig, and it's not. This is not a ball head jig. This is a I'm at a loss for words. This is a barbed jig. I'll see this here shortly once I get all this other stuff out of the way here. This is a barb jig, that barb right there. Hair jigs I do now have a ball collar. It's a collar that goes the whole way around them. So that's that quick. It's down to a bare jig head. Now our next step we're going to do, I'm going to go and I'm going to take that paint off, and we're going to get it down to lead. This top piece up here, the spur that was cut off, I'll get rid of that. I'll get rid of the mold lines that you can see here in it. I don't know if you can see that one as much. You see the one up here pretty well, but we're going to get rid of all that, and then we'll prime it, paint it, and start rebuilding it. So I've taken this container. It's just got a little bit of MEK solution in it. Just going to take that jig and set that jig right in there, let it soak for a little bit. And actually it's already starting to come off. So it's not gonna take long. this MEK is hot. It's a very hot solution. It's actually meant to thin down vinyl paint for those that did. And that's what this will do. I'll do this the same way this one was made. Instead of powder painting it, I'll do this in all vinyl paint. You know, just to show the difference of how it does. It's pretty cool. That baby's really chewing on that already. So once that's stripped off, we'll come back and we'll start from scratch. So I wanted to show this. It's been a couple minutes this has been in here, and I just took a paintbrush to it, and that stuff peels right off of there. The eye looks like it's wants to keep itself, wants to see what's going on. So this is dried off now. This is how it all starts. And after the jig's been molded with lead, paper towel stuck on it. And what I'll do is, just for the sake of beautifying this this mold mark and stuff up here, I'll take a plier to it, or plier. I'll take a file to it and file all those mold lines down, so it'll be a seamless head when I'm done. Seamless head when I'm done there. All right, so we just moved over to the other, my paint table. I'm mixing this white vinyl up. I like this being to a consistency that, you know, it pours out relatively quickly. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's not milk, a little thicker than milk. I like it to at least pour a little bit as I'm doing that. So we will take our jig, now that has been cleaned up, and it's a simple dip. Dip in. And the speed of pulling it out is directly relation to how much drip you get. I like mine to drip a couple times. Got up on my drying rack. And you'll see it drip once, maybe twice till I get all said and done. Now this is, since this is just one, I'll clean this up. I'll close this paint up a little bit. Get that out of the way. And then while we're waiting, I use bamboo skewers. Now, keep in mind too, folks, I'm a hobbyist. I used to do this as a business, but I do not mass produce anymore. Actually, when I did mass produce, they were done one at a time anyway. They were never in any kind of a manufacturing process. But I'm a hobbyist level, so yeah, there are different ways of doing this. This is the way I enjoy doing it. This is my release from the rest of the world. If I'm not fishing, I can come down here and kind of disappear a little bit into doing some jigs. If you can see in the background, I mean, I got a bunch of smaller projects going on for myself and my boys. They have both been taught how to make these jigs this way. We do powder paint, we do powder airbrushing. We'll do a combination of vinyl paint and enamel paints. You know, any kind of water-based paints as far as airbrush themes and stuff like that. And I actually do hand stripe any of my fire tigers. I think I have some out here. I was showing another friend my fire tigers here. That striping is all done by hand with a brush. So I mean, we get a little bit of everything going on here. We'll keep in mind of what's going on here. So we will just take this and get that excess off. This is where I'll clean my eyelets out. So nobody has to worry about paint, and then that will dry. When that comes back and dry, we will use black and do the same thing. It's a dip procedure and get some color on it. So I got my black to the point where I like the consistency. It's running pretty good. And it's been, I don't know, maybe 20-25 minutes. And this is dry to the touch. And you can see, you know, what it looks like now. The question why I used white as a primer coat. It's always best to do it under lighter colors because it makes the colors pop a little more. But even when using black, I always put a white coat down as a, I almost consider it an etching primer. It's not, because this is not, you know, in any way, shape, or form permanently bonded with that lead. But the consistency, the thinness that I pour this, it will go down and it will fill in all the little, I mean, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but you can see it almost looks like alcohol Acme on the face of the lead. This fills it up. When I go into my color, then that color will actually be smoother than what it would, and I don't have to use 2 coats of color. Not that it makes a difference because I am using a coat of white as well with it. But then we're just going to dip this. This is going to go into the black. And again, the rate that you pull it out is directly proportional with how much drippage you get. But there's our black jig. So we'll let that dry for a little bit, and then our next step is to put the eyes back on it so I can see what it's doing. There's over there, white, red, and black. And we will need our jig, which is now dry. We dry it off there. Stylist. So we will start with the white here. Give that a good stir again. Again, we're looking for that same consistency. I want it runny. A fast run, and we got to determine what size white. I think the original jig had a large white center to it, and we're going to do something just a little bit different with that. But I'm going to take a stylus, and this stylus, it's just a ball end, and that will give you a perfectly round circle every time. So I just, you know, we'll load up the bottom of it like that. I just want to see how big a one I'm dealing with. That's a little big for my liking, but maybe we can control that. I'll come over here. Get a towel to clean this off. What we're going to do here is we're going to dot each side of this jig with a white dot. Straight up, straight down. And just through habit. A couple things I do there. I always rest my hand on here, so my action is just in my fingers. They go straight up and straight down on the jig. And I always, for me, I found that if I take this jig and I put it in the vise this way, and you can see that I have two different vices here. I use this vise solely for this purpose, actually solely for putting eyes on, and if I'm hand painting anything on, I use this vise only because of this. It's much easier for me to do that, and I can take that and I lay that jig horizontal, and then I'll space the eyes based off the eyelet of the hook. I'll come straight in from that, kind of pick center on both of them, and then if you can see this, you know, you can see that that jig's looking at you. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're even or if they're not even. It doesn't matter one iota. So we're going to let this dry here for a couple minutes. Come right back behind with the next color. Okay, so we have our next part of our eye was that red. Now if you remember correctly, that original jig had a white backing and a red center. We're going to change that up just a little bit. We're going to continue with that theme or that color scheme. Again, I just want to make sure that this is the right consistency, because I don't want it to flow too much, but I don't want it to glop on me either. So using the same side of the stylus, the same size of this, I'm going to come in, I'm going to take that red, load that up, and I'm going to try to get as much that red on as I can. Now obviously I missed it there, but it's okay for what we're doing. And kind of the same thing there. Now one of the reasons that I laid the white down first is that it allows that red to pop. It does make that red more vibrant. Rather than putting the red against the black jig, it'll dull it a little bit. I do want that red to be a nice bright red, and on top of the white, it makes that pop a little bit better. So we have a little bit of liner of an eye, a white backer and the red. We're going to come through and we're going to do another step on this yet, which keeps us, you know, in the theme of an eye of a jig. Oh, that's lovely. So I was talking about putting the centers in his eye, and I realized I never hit record. So backing up, we use this stylus. The stylus has two different sizes on it. I went and I used a smaller size. Same deal with the black. Put a black center in the eye. Slightly different from what there was there before, but this was always my favorite part of putting eyes on jigs, because now, to me, it has some life to it. Now it looks like a real critter that actually has a set of eyes. So we'll let this dry, and then our last step working with the jig itself, the jig head itself, is putting the clear coat over top of it. That protects the finish, and actually has a little bit of worm proofing. So if we weren't going to tie to this jig, this having a barb on it like that, if you put a plastic bait on, a lot of the plastic baits right now have a scent to them, like an oil to them, that's hot, and it's hotter than the paint is, just like when we melted that off, and it'll melt the paint right off this jig. This protective coating will stop that from happening. The next step, we're going to take some sealant, and we're going to seal everything. Now, because we used the same paint for everything on this jig, we can use this sealant. And actually, when I airbrush, I can get away using the same sealant too. It's a little hotter than my airbrush paint, but if I don't mess with it, it doesn't seem to affect it. So it's the same procedure here as we did when we painted. Just take that and put the clear on, go, and then we hang it up, and we'll give that a second or two to drip. These out of here. And I usually time these, like, if I have a bunch of them to do, I'll dip one, hang it up, come over, dip the other one, hang it up, and by the time I have this one hung up, I can go back and I can tap off this first one, because right now you can see, I mean, we have a little bit hanging on the bottom of it, but that's kind of exactly where I take it. You flip it over, you don't have anything there. We're going to take another step and open up that eyelet. Again, every paint step I do, or every seal step I do, I want to keep that eyelet open. And that's it for that. So now we wait for that to dry and we can start tying. Okay, so there we have it. Jig's been painted. Now let's tie it up and see what we can do with it here. So I will typically start by laying down a bit of thread there first for where I want the hair to cinch down into. It kind of gives it a rough texture for the hair to crinkle into. And then I always start, I don't know why, I always start on the bottom first. Now we knew we had yellow, so we're going to go with a yellow bucktail here first. And I'm just going to pinch off enough of this for how much I want. Remember, that one didn't have, it wasn't a half and half, it was just like an accent color on the bottom of the jig. Now people can stack this. I don't like to stack, but what I will do is lay this up against to where I want to be, and right about there is where I like that hook to be. So I'm going to end up coming back something like that, which is probably about 2 inches. Right around 2 inches there on my mark. From the very tip to where I'm going to tie at. So I'll take these and I'm just going to do a straight cut on that hair. Tie that in here. Now I'm not going to put a whole lot of wraps. I do 2 types of wraps. I do what's called a utilitarian wrap, which is just the wraps that keep the hair in place. And then I do an aesthetic wrap, which is to make the jig look pretty. You know, because you always fish a good looking lure different than you fish an ugly lure. Now we will probably end up doing this black in 2 bunches by the looks of things. Not sure if I can get 2 inches out of the hair that's left on here yet or not. Oh yeah. We'll just check it now. I'm not sure if you guys can see this. Put it against a. Some of these hairs are a little bit longer, so I'll actually take these, pull them out, and drop them back in again. Like I said, some guys stack them. I like the randomness. I like the randomness of the end of the hair when I tie. I'm losing my footwork. And again here I'm taking that little bit, and the trash can below me, I'm just cutting it off right into the trash can. I'm going to just take my fingers, I'm going to work that around a little bit. And in each thing I do, I always do a whip finish, just a real quick whip finish on it. Now see, I have a little bit back here, so that will, I'll put another little section of hair on there yet, just to finish that up. And I'm not getting a very large clump of hair, because when you get too much, you can't quite cinch it down right. Here again, now I'm a little short, so I'll take that and I'll keep working this hand down to where I want the length of my hair to be there. So I want it there. I'll square this end up. And put this, now I will overlay this a little bit where that first black was, and I'll let that, whoops, sorry, I forgot to move my camera up. So I'll overlay that where the other one is, and I'll let this thread, when I pull this thread down, you can see that pulls that hair around to where I actually want it to be. And again, just 3 wraps. I still have a gap, but I can take that and I'll flatten that out with my finger, spread that around, and now I've got the amount that I want there. So now I'm going to do this utilitarian wrap I was discussing, just to cinch all that down. Pull that relatively tight. And a whip finish just to keep that in place. Now, technically you can leave your jig like that. I will go in, you probably won't be able to see this as I do it, but I will go in and I will shave that extra hair off. I'm not taking it right down to the thread, because we want that to be underneath there yet a little bit. But I will go the whole way around that jig. Cut that extra off. And then everything else from here on out is going to be all for aesthetics. So now we're just going to cover all this up. And as you can see, I'm not getting the thread down in front of that hair, because that will end up pushing it back. And I don't like a real large collar. I like a relatively short collar. But I'm just looking for what needs to be covered up as far as that black hair. I cinch that down. Now my last wrap that I'll do here, I'll end up doing 8 whip finishes, and I'll run it down the length of the tie. And then back up again, pull that out, pull that down. And there you have it. One retro finish jig.